A hiker vanished into the woods of northern Michigan last fall, and Bigfoot carried him in there on camera. That hiker was my brother, and the Sasquatch picked one of the three of us to take off into the timber alive while my camera was still running. What Bigfoot was carrying my brother towards in the last 40 seconds of that footage is the most disturbing thing anybody has ever filmed Bigfoot doing. My name is Cal, and the man Bigfoot carried into the woods is my brother Jesse. Our dad Roy took the two of us up into the Porcupine Mountains every October from the time we could walk. And last fall was supposed to be the first year Jesse and I did the carrying and Roy did the resting, because he was 63 and his knees were finished. I have filmed every one of those trips since I was 19 years old. That is the only reason any of this exists. I wear a chest camera the whole time we are out. I have worn one for 11 years, and it was running when Bigfoot came down out of that timber, and it was still running for everything that came after. The two of us did not walk out of the Ottawa National Forest. One of them the sheriff brought out in a bag 11 days later, and the other one has never been found. So please stay with all of it, because the part that matters is not the part you think. I want to give you 1 minute of the good part first, because there was a good part and it is most of what I have left. We came in over the escarpment on a Thursday with the maples 2 days past peak, and Roy made us stop at the overlook the way he had every October for 25 years. My father was slow and he knew it, and he made jokes about it the whole way. That is on the camera too. My brother quietly taking things out of our father's pack when Roy was not looking and putting them on his own. 9 hours later, Bigfoot was standing on a hillside watching the three of us walk past, and none of that footage is worth anything to anybody now except me. The first thing my camera caught was by accident, and I did not find it for 4 months. We were 9 miles in on the second afternoon on an old grade above Little Carp. Easy walking, the three of us, strung out with Roy, in the middle setting the pace. In the footage, I turn my body to check on him, and for about a second and a half, the lens sweeps across a gap in the hemlocks, maybe 60 yards uphill of us. There is something standing in that gap. It is not blurred. It is not a stump. When you freeze it, you can see the shoulders and the drop of the arms and the shape of a head with no neck under it, and it is turned toward the three of us. Nobody saw it. We walked another 2 miles that day, telling stories about Roy's knees, and Bigfoot stood on that hillside and watched us go by. And the camera on my chest had already recorded the thing that was going to take my brother. That was not the only frame it was in, and finding the rest of them is what finally broke something in me. After the funeral, I sat down and went through all 11 hours of that trip at quarter speed, every clip from the truck onward. Bigfoot is in 6 of them. It is in a clip from the first morning, standing off the trail behind Roy's shoulder while my father tells a story about a bull moose. It is in a clip from the first evening at 400 yards across a beaver flowage, sitting down, which is the only time on any recording I have ever seen it sit. It is in the background of a shot of my brother filtering water, closer in that one than in any of the others. Nobody in my family ever knew. For 2 full days, before it did anything at all, Bigfoot walked along inside the camera range of 3 men and let itself be recorded over and over. And I have come to believe it did not care whether we filmed it, because it already knew none of us were going to be in a position to show anybody. That night is when Bigfoot let us know, and it did not do it the way anybody would expect. There was no scream out of the dark, and nothing came into camp. What happened is that around 3 in the morning, something started hitting a tree. One hard knock, then a long wait, then another, working around us at a distance of maybe 200 yards. Patient as a man, knocking on doors down a street, and it kept it up for better than an hour. Roy was awake. He had spent 50 years in that country, and he sat up in his bag the whole time and did not say one word about bears. In the morning, he wanted to know if I had gotten the sound, and I had, and the three of us stood around my little screen, listening to Bigfoot knock on wood in the dark and telling each other it was probably somebody else's camp, which is the last completely normal thing our family ever did together. We found the first structure that same morning about 200 yards off the grade, and I filmed all of it. 6 young maples, none thicker through than my wrist, bent over from about 10 feet up and twisted down so the crowns were driven into the dirt in a rough arc, maybe 15 feet across. The brakes were not brakes. Every one of those trunks was crushed and folded at the bend, the way a piece of copper pipe folds, and they were still green. Roy walked around the outside of it twice and would not step inside. He had cut timber in that county for 30 years, and he told us he had seen 2 of these in his life. And both times, he walked out of the woods the same day. On the audio, you can hear my brother ask what makes them, and you can hear nobody answer him. Bigfoot had built something 40 feet off the trail we were about to walk, and it had built it recently, and it wanted us to find it. The next morning, our food was gone, and that is when Roy said we were leaving. Both bear bags were down, not chewed open. The cord had been pulled through the branch, and both bags were sitting upright on the ground beneath it, and every bit of food was gone out of them, and the bags themselves were not torn anywhere. A bear takes the bag. Whatever took ours did not take the bag. It opened them, took what was in them, and set them back down on their bottoms in the leaves like a man unpacking groceries. Roy did not say the word Bigfoot, and neither did Jesse, but my father made the call inside of about 4 minutes, and it was the right call, and we started back down the grade toward the trailhead 9 miles out. That is on the camera too. Us walking out fast, and the timber on the uphill side going quiet as a church around us. There is one more thing on the audio from that night that I did not hear until I ran it through software, and it is the reason I stopped believing we had a chance. I had assumed all that knocking came from one animal. It did not. When you separate the channels, you can hear that the knocks come from 2 distinct positions, one northeast of us and one almost due south, and they never overlap. One knocks, and then the other answers it, and then there's a gap, and then it starts again. That went on for an hour and 4 minutes. Whatever Bigfoot was doing out there on our second night, he was doing something else. And the 2 of them were talking about the 3 of us over our heads while we lay in our bags, telling each other it was another camp. Bigfoot let us get about 1.5 miles. And then it put a tree across the trail. We heard it come down ahead of us, a long tearing crack, and then the whump. And when we came around the bend, there was a hemlock lying across the grade with the break 4 feet up. The trunk and the wood at the break still bright and wet. I have the whole thing on video, including Jesse climbing up on it and standing there looking uphill into the trees. Nothing rots and breaks off 4 feet up. Something pushed that tree over the way you push over a fence post, and it did it 30 seconds ahead of us on the only route we had. And Roy said the thing that I have gone back to more than anything else he ever said to me. He said it is not trying to hide from us anymore, so it must have decided it does not need to. Then Bigfoot started throwing things at us, and it was not trying to hit anybody, which took me a long time to understand. The first came down through the canopy and hit the grade 8 feet ahead of Roy, and it was not a pebble, it was a piece of gray stone the size of a coffee can thrown better than 100 feet. My father stopped dead. The second one came in from our left and cracked off a birch beside Jesse's head. The third landed behind us. That is on the video, and you can hear all 3 of them land, and you can hear my brother start swearing, and you can hear Roy tell us both to keep walking and not look up. Every one of those rocks came down somewhere. The 3 of us were not. And I know now that Bigfoot could have put any one of them through my father's skull from that range. And I know that because of what it did to him with its hands 2 days later. It came at us in daylight an hour later. And this is the part of the recording that people argue about, because Bigfoot does something in it that makes no sense until you know how the story ends. We were pushing through a stand of young maple when it came down the slope. There is no describing the speed. It covered 40 yards of broken ground in the time it takes to draw a breath, and it went straight past my father, who was closest, and straight past me, and it hit Jesse. It put my brother flat on his back in the leaves and stood over him with one hand on his chest, and Jesse was screaming and beating at that arm with both fists, and then it let him up. It took its hand off him and stepped back and stood there, 8 feet of it, and watched my brother crawl backward through the leaves to us. It had my brother on the ground under its hand, and it chose to stop. At the time, I thought we had scared it off by yelling. I have watched that clip several hundred times since, and there is not one frame where Bigfoot looks at me or my father at all. It does not check us. It does not orient on the noise the two of us were making 8 feet away from it. Everything about that animal, from the first second to the last, is pointed at my brother, and the moment it had him down and safely under its hand, it stopped because it had gotten exactly as far as it meant to get that afternoon and no further. Roy understood before I did, and he said it out loud that afternoon while we were moving. He said that thing went through both of us to get to Jesse. He was right, and it was worse than he knew. Because if you go back through my footage from the whole trip with that idea in your head, Bigfoot is never once oriented on my father or on me. On the hillside, on the first afternoon, the head is turned toward the middle of our line, which is where Jesse was walking. When it came down that slope, it corrected twice to stay on him. My brother was 6'2" and 31 years old, and the strongest of us, and that is exactly backward from how anything hunts. Everything that has ever eaten anything picks the slow one. There was a man with a bad knee walking in the middle of our line for 3 days, and Bigfoot never gave him 1 second of attention until he got in the way. And I could not work out why a thing that size would choose the hardest on us. And I would not understand it until the last 40 seconds of the recording. Jesse said it out loud that night before anybody else was willing to. He was sitting with his back against a deadfall, holding a stick in the fire, and he said in a completely flat voice that it was coming for him. He said it went past both of you. He said it had 2 clear chances at Dad, and it did not take them. And it had a clear chance at me, and it did not take it. And then he asked our father what a thing like that would want with him specifically. Roy told him it was a wild animal, and animals pick the biggest one, which was the kindest lie my father ever told, and both of them knew it while he was saying it. On the recording, my brother does not argue. He sits there a while and then says the thing I hear in the middle of the night, which is that he would rather it got it over with. Bigfoot was 50 yards out in the dark, listening to a 31-year-old man work out what it wanted with him, and it was in no hurry at all. We ran, and Bigfoot herded us, and I did not know that was what was happening until I mapped it out on paper a year later. Every time we tried to angle downhill toward the river and the trail that runs along it, we found it standing in the way, not charging, standing unhurried up on the slope above us with its arms hanging. And every time we saw it, we turned, and every turn we made pushed us east and uphill and away from the little carp. It never had to touch us to do it. On the video, you can hear my father getting quieter and quieter as the afternoon goes. And about 4 p.m, he stopped and put his hands on his knees and told us we were being walked somewhere and that we were not going to be allowed to reach the river. That night, Bigfoot came into the camp, and it was the first time it put its hands on my father. We had no tent by then, and we were sitting against a boulder with a fire going. It came out of the dark on the fireside, which no animal does, and it went for Jesse again. And this time, Roy got in the way. My father was 63 years old with 2 bad knees, and he stood up into the path of a thing more than twice his size. And it hit him with the back of its arm and put him into the boulder hard enough that I heard the sound his shoulder made from 10 feet off. Then it took hold of Jesse's leg and pulled him out of the firelight on his back, about 15 feet, with my brother's hands full of leaves and dirt. And then it stopped again. It let go of his ankle, and it stood there in the dark at the edge of my camera's range, and it let us drag him back to the fire. Twice now, Bigfoot had my brother, and twice it turned him loose. And my father was lying against a rock with a broken collarbone, and none of it made any sense to any of us. Everything about the third morning was wrong, and the footage shows every bit of it. Roy could not use his right arm. Jesse's ankle was swelling up through his boot, and when the light came up enough to see, Bigfoot was standing out in the open about 100 yards downslope, in plain view, facing us, and it stayed there. It did not approach, and it did not leave. It stood out there in the wet grass, as patient as a fence post. On the recording, you can hear the 3 of us discussing it in the flattest voices you have ever heard, because by then we had all quit pretending. My father said the only thing left to say, which was that it was waiting on something. Then he said the other thing, and I did not understand it until I was standing on that root ball 2 hours later. He said, whatever it is waiting for, boys, it is not waiting for us to be scared, because we have been scared since the second night, and it has not moved. And I want you to understand what that means, because I did not at the time. Bigfoot had been ahead of us for 3 days. It had a plan and it was on schedule, and the only thing it was waiting for was for us to be worn down enough to make the mistake it needed. The mistake was mine. Around noon, Roy could not keep going, and we put him under a blowdown to rest. And I said I would go up the ridge and see if I could get one bar to come down out of that country. Jesse stayed with our father. I was gone maybe 20 minutes and I did not get any signal, and I have thought 1,000 times about what would have happened if I had refused to leave them. But I know the answer, because Bigfoot had already shown me what it does when somebody gets in the way. It would have gone through me too. On my chest camera, you can hear me climbing and breathing hard, and then you can hear the sound come up the ridge behind me, my father, yelling my brother's name once, and then nothing at all. What Bigfoot did to my father is the worst thing on the recording, and I have never released that section to anybody. I came back down that ridge with the camera bouncing, and I came into the clearing at the blowdown, and it was still happening. It had Roy on the ground, and it had both hands on him. It was not biting him, and it was not tearing at him. It was breaking him slowly, the way you break apart a wooden pallet when there is nothing else to do. And it took its time about all of it. The microphone on my chest is 6 feet from all of it and picks up every sound either of them made. I heard his ribs go in a run. One, and then another, and then 3 more. Dry cracks, like somebody stepping through a crate, and then something lower and wetter that I think was his hip, and my father screamed in a way I did not know. A person could scream, and then he could not get the air to do it anymore. It shifted its grip twice. Both times, it took hold somewhere new and leaned in and waited. The way a man tests whether a board is going to give before he puts his weight on it, and both times the sound that came out of my father afterward was lower and wetter than the time before. Roy had walked me into those mountains when I was 4 years old on his shoulders. Jesse was 10 feet away trying to get up on a bad ankle. And the entire time it worked on my father, Bigfoot kept its head turned toward my brother, not toward Roy. It killed a 63-year-old man without looking at him one time. Then it stopped and it stood up off my father's body, and it did not come after either of us. That is the moment the whole thing finally turned over in my head, and you can hear it in my voice on the audio because I start saying my brother's name over and over. Bigfoot had just shown us exactly what it was capable of and exactly how little effort it took, and then it stepped back and let us pick each other up and stumble off east through the timber with my brother's arm over my shoulders. It had killed the man who got in the way, and it had not laid one finger on the man it wanted. It was not hunting the 3 of us, and it never had been. It had come for Jesse, and everything else it did out there was just clearing a path to him. The mile after that is the worst walking I will ever do. Jesse's ankle would not hold him, and he went with his arm across my shoulders, and we left our father lying in that clearing because there was nothing else on this earth we could do. And the whole way Bigfoot came behind us at about 60 yards and never tried to close it. I could hear it, not crashing, walking, steady, matching us, stopping when we stopped to let Jesse get his breath, and starting again when we started. It let us have that mile the same way he had let my brother crawl backward out of its hand. And I understand now that it was not following us at all. It was escorting one of us, and the other one of us happened to be attached to him. We made it about a mile before Bigfoot finished it, and the last part of the recording is only 4 minutes long. Jesse could not go any further. We got in behind a root ball where a big pine had come out of the ground, and I got him down in the hollow, and I climbed up on the root mass with the camera, which is how the footage exists at all. I could see maybe 40 yards of open hardwood. For a while, there was nothing, and the loudest thing on the audio is my brother underneath me trying to breathe quietly. And then Bigfoot came out of the trees at a walk from the left side of the frame, unhurried, in no hurry at all, after 3 days of this. Straight to the root ball, like it had known where we were the whole time, which it had. The last thing I heard before it came around that root ball was my brother saying my name, and the last thing I smelled was Bigfoot itself, which is a detail nobody ever asks about, and the one I would most like to forget. It is not musk, and it is not a wet dog. It is the smell of an animal that has been eating meat and not cleaning itself for a very long time. It arrives before the animal does, and it is thick enough to turn your stomach over. I got it in the back of my throat about 4 seconds before it stepped into frame. If you ever smell that in the woods, you have already run out of time, because Bigfoot does not let you smell it until it has decided the distance no longer matters. Here's the part that the title of this promises you, and here is exactly what the camera shows. Bigfoot came around the root mass and it reached down into that hollow, and Jesse did not even fight it. My brother had watched it kill our father an hour before, and he knew what those arms could do, and he went limp. And I think some part of him believed that not fighting would keep him alive. Bigfoot got one arm under his back and one under his legs, and it picked my brother up off the ground the way you lift somebody out of a hospital bed. 210 pounds of grown man came off the leaves without the thing that lifted him changing its footing. There is no blur on any of it. It is 6 feet from the lens at the closest point, in flat afternoon light under open hardwood, and you can see the seams of old scar tissue across the top of its forearm, and the way the hair lies down flat and wet along the outside of its shoulder, and the shape of the fingers closed around my brother's thigh. It did not sling him, it did not drag him. It settled his weight against its chest, and it shifted him once to get him sitting right, deliberate about it, taking its time out in the open. And then it turned and walked away with him into the trees, and my brother was alive and awake and looking back over its shoulder at me the whole time. I want to be very clear about something, because people watch that clip and tell me it looks almost gentle. Every time somebody says that, I want to put my hands through a wall. It was not being kind to my brother. It was being careful with him the way you are careful with something you have gone to a lot of trouble to get and do not want to damage before you get it home. Bigfoot had spent 3 days and killed my father to take one man alive and undamaged out of those mountains. And a thing that will not kill you when killing you would be easier is not sparing you. It wants you for something that being dead would ruin. That is the only reason any of it happened the way it did. And I would rather it had torn my brother apart in front of me than what I actually have to live with. And the last thing my camera recorded is the reason I stopped sleeping. I stayed up on that root ball and I kept filming because I could not do anything else. And the lens followed Bigfoot for about 30 more seconds as it carried my brother away through open hardwood. And in that last stretch of footage, you can see 2 things behind it that I did not notice for months. The first is the ground it is walking on. It is not walking through brush. There is a line through those trees where the leaf litter is packed down and the small stuff is broken off at about shoulder height on both sides, running east, straight, and it goes as far back into that timber as the camera can see. That is a trail, not a deer trail. Something the size of the thing carrying my brother has walked that same line so many times that it has worn a road into the floor of a national forest, and it was carrying Jesse straight down the middle of it, like a man going home from work. And the second thing is what is standing at the end of it. About 70 yards out, at the limit of what that lens can resolve, back in the shadow where the hardwood closes up, there are 3 more of them. They are not moving. They are standing in a loose group off to the side of that packed trail, and they are facing the one carrying my brother, and they are waiting for it. You can count them. 3. 2 of them are the size of the one carrying my brother, and the third is noticeably smaller. And that smaller one is the one standing furthest forward, out ahead of the other 2, like something that has been told to wait and is not very good at waiting at. Nobody came running out to help because none of that was necessary. Bigfoot had gone out and collected a healthy 31-year-old man, and it was bringing him back along a road it had worn into the ground. And there were others standing at the end of that road waiting for it to arrive with him. That is the last thing on the file. 2 seconds later, my brother goes behind a trunk and does not come out the other side, and the recording ends 14 seconds after that when I finally get down off the root ball. I walked out of the Porcupine Mountains at 2 the next morning, and I have never been back into that country. The Ontonagon County Sheriff and the DNR and about 90 volunteers went in after them. They found my father where I said he would be, and the coroner ruled it a bear, which is the only ruling available to a man who has to write something on the line. They walked that whole east side for 11 days. They never found my brother. They never found one Bigfoot track anywhere on that hillside. And when I took 2 deputies to the root ball and showed them the packed trail running east through the hardwood, One told me it was a game trail, and the other did not say anything at all. I asked the quiet one about it in the parking lot afterward. He said that in 19 years in that county, he had never seen a game trail with the branches broken off, clean at 7 feet on both sides, and then he asked me not to put his name on anything. I released about 90 seconds of it eventually, and inside of 4 months, it had stopped being about my brother at all. My father is dead, and my brother is gone. And the clearest footage of Bigfoot anybody has ever taken is an argument between strangers about frame rate S.
That is the part nobody warns you about. And it is not the part that keeps me up.
What keeps me up is what I found last March, sitting at my kitchen table with the county aerial photos open on a laptop. You can see it from the air. That packed line running east through the hardwood off the root ball is visible in the leaf-off imagery as a pale seam in the canopy. And once you know to look for it, you cannot stop seeing it. And it does not stop where the camera stopped. I followed it across 4 tiles. It runs better than 11 miles east through the country with no road and no reason for anything to be. And it bends twice around wet ground the way a path bends when something has walked it in every season. Then I went back through the older imagery. It has been in flight for 6 years. It is in the one from 12 years back. Fainter, but it is in the same place. Bigfoot has been walking that same line east through the Ottawa National Forest since before my brother was old enough to carry a pack, and I am not going to tell you on camera where the far end of it comes out. So that is the footage, and here is the only thing I have that is worth anything to you. Everybody wants to talk about whether Bigfoot is real, and nobody ever asks the right question, which is what it wants. Real is the easy part. I have a real memory card in a safe deposit box in Ontonagon. I can tell you what it wants. It did not want to eat my brother because it had a much easier meal lying broken in a clearing a mile back, and it walked away from him without a second look. It wanted Jesse alive. It went through a 63-year-old man to get him. It turned him loose twice rather than risk hurting him. It carried him like something breakable, and it took him down a road it had used so many times. The ground remembers to 3 more of them standing in the dark waiting for it to come back. My brother was still breathing when he went behind that tree. He has been gone 14 months. So if you are ever back in a country like that and something enormous comes down a slope at your group and goes past you to get at somebody else, do not tell yourself you got lucky, and do not tell yourself it spared you. Count who it went past, because Bigfoot has already picked, and the one it picked is not the one it is going to kill, and I do not think for 1 second that whatever it wanted my brother for is finished yet.